Allow me to reiterate for the 50,000th time that the length of my episodes does not denote quality of the work. I talk until I run out of things to talk about, that's all. And in some cases I struggle to have things to talk about, like with the infamous Doom Rumination, where I basically didn't talk about the game because I had nothing to talk about, really. But that brings us to this game, and it's weird. Very, very weird. Because I beat Dishonored, and then, recorded the episode. And then immediately, same day, fired up Assassin's Creed Rogue. And going straight from Dishonored to Rogue is very strange. Especially having done a complete never-be-seen, never-kill playthrough of Dishonored, whereas in Rogue, getting seen is commonplace, and killing is constant, and indeed one of the main points of the game. Assassin being in the title and all that. Before we really go forward, let's talk about a couple of things about the series as a whole. One of the biggest complaints I've heard about it is fatigue. Now, let me go ahead and get this out there by saying that I don't get the fatigue problem. I don't. That's just me personally. But if you produced a game of, let's use a random example here, Shovel Knight quality. Shovel Knight 2 came out the next year, and then Shovel Knight 3, and then Shovel Knight 4. And they're all of the same relative quality, and I do say relative. Obviously, they're not going to be the exact same quality, but they're at least within the same range as Shovel Knight. I would not get fatigued at the fact that I am still playing another Shovel Knight game. That doesn't equate to me. This is actually something I'll be talking about in my future and your past with regards to the Doctor Strange movie, which just came out. Again, by my perspective. Because it's another MCU movie, which I don't see a problem with. So I wanted to get that out there in front, because a lot of the complaints I've heard with regards to the Assassin's Creed series of late, with regards to Rogue, Unity, and Syndicate, is series fatigue. I don't understand it personally. I mean, I get the general logical gist that you're tired of having the same thing, but that doesn't work in my brain, basically. In the way I think of it, the only way that would actually work is if I was never playing any other game, if I was just playing Assassin's Creed, and then a year passes in which I do nothing else, and then I play the next Assassin's Creed game. In that case, sure, I could see that. Or maybe if I sat down and played all the Assassin's Creeds, back to back to back, yeah, I'd probably get a little fatigued at it. But with all the other games coming out and all the breadth of time in between each game, and I'm sorry, but a year is a fairly large period of time, at least from a personal perspective or a gamer's perspective, yeah, I don't get it. Now, that being said, regardless of the fatigue equation, I came to a realization as I was going through Rogue. Assassin's Creed is a game TV series. Let me explain what I mean by that. I have often said that in an ideal environment, an environment in which, you have an infinite budget, basically, a television series is one of the most fascinating mediums to present a story, because it has a lot more time to work with than any other medium. A book, a movie, a game, a play, a song, all of those are much more truncated. You can't do as much with a movie because you've got your hour-and-a-half to 3-hour runtime. You can't do as much with a game because you're trying to conceal the story within the single game, and it takes so long to make sequels that any iterations between the story have to be, I can't snap my fingers with these gloves, but fairly quickly, or have to kind of be self-contained games. And you get my point. I'm not going to go over each point. But a television series, you can tell an advancing story that will take a long time to tell. So in other words, you can have lots of extra time for character development, setting building, thematic significance, all that fun stuff. You can do stuff in each episode that adds to the breadth and depth of the work, and then have these stories pay off over time. Of course, that usually doesn't work that way because, as I've mentioned several times over in my Voyager and Babylon 5 videos, making a television show is a nightmare and has to deal with not just the problems of budget in terms of money, but budget in terms of time, availability in terms of actors. Sometimes people just don't want to work in the project anymore. A lot of behind-the-scenes politics and the studios that are calling the shots, all sorts of other terrible stuff like that. So that's why I had to predicate that with that extent. If we could just make a TV show as a medium, regardless of all the other garbage that comes along with making a TV show, I find it to be an excellent long-term storytelling thing. So based on that, you probably understand what I mean with the Assassin's Creed series. Each new Assassin's Creed is basically another episode. It's just a fairly large and fairly long episode. It evolves and moves and grows naturally. I would say it would probably be easier to imagine each episode each chapter, each mission within a specific Assassin's Creed game would probably be another episode if this was actually a television series. Do not mistake me for saying that I think that the AC series should be a TV show. I'm saying it basically is already. It's just, imagine if, well, they've discontinued this policy, but every year we get a giant block, like one season is released in a day, and then there's a year block, and then another season is released. That's equivalently to what we already have. Each Assassin's Creed game slowly builds on the previous ones. Each Assassin's Creed game just kind of moves things forward, adds new flavor and inflection to the setting, to the themes, adding new characters, removing old characters. It's not afraid of changing the status quo, which I'm actually very in favor of, and I think is something that television series should have. All sorts of stuff like that. Now, that being said, and I do praise the AC series for that, I do want to say one other thing. The Assassin's Creed series has always been two stories, past and present. And the present storyline has been integrally married to the past storyline right up until Assassin's Creed 3, when that kind of concluded. I don't mean that the present storyline concluded. I'm trying to avoid spoilers for this AC series as a whole. But even though the present storyline is still going, it has stalled significantly. And on top of that, it doesn't really have a lot to do with the past storyline anymore. There are scenes, okay, I'm going to just kind of spoil some of the previous AC games, so this is your big warning, spoiler alert. I'm not going to throw up a graphic. If, in the previous games, Ezio's story, Altair's stories were integrally tied in to the main present time story, the build-up to the disaster and how they're going to deal with it. If it wasn't for all of that build-up, if it wasn't for all of that establishment in the past, the present wouldn't have had nearly as much of an impact. But now, the past only basically serves its own function and has a few small things to do with the present storyline. Do you see the difference? Now, I know this is not an uncommon thing to state, but I have said more than once, and before I played Rogue actually, that the past and present storylines should be completely diverged, and that the present storyline should continue in their own story. Anybody who knows the full depth of what's been going on at Ubisoft probably is tilting their head right now because they tried that, and then they changed their minds, and I'm not really sure where they're going with that now. As of my saying this, Watch Dogs 2 has not come out, so I'm not sure where that's going with that. But Watch Dogs was a clear and obvious way to continue the present storyline. It was an origin story for a superhero, effectively, a Batman-style vigilante. No special powers like the like I theorize that the main bloodline of the assassins have, like Ezio, for example. For those of you who haven't seen my previous Assassin's Creed videos, I have theorized many times that the reason we can pull off so many things in the past, and with Desmond, is because they're literally superhuman. As in literally. They are stronger, faster, more durable, etc. And well-trained, of course, but you get my point. So we had, with Aiden Pierce, we had the possibility of having a non-superpowered, but still very skilled hero to take over in the present in the fight against Juno and all that fun stuff. Or is it Minerva? I actually can't remember which one it is. That's how irrelevant it was for this game. The first ones. You have someone to take on the fight against the Templars, Abstergo, and Juno. And there was even direct correlation. Assassin's Creed 4 referenced directly Watch Dogs. Watch Dogs directly, but in a side quest, referenced Assassin's Creed 4. And the two were very fit seamlessly together. And then they came out and said, no, different universes. You could tell that was a retcon, that second part. It's so obvious that it was presented as if they were one thing. I wonder why they did that, because playing this game, especially Rogue, getting back to the current game, the present stuff just gets in the way. It really does. It really has so little to do with the past. It is effectively a side story that every time it interrupted the past story, I actually found myself getting frustrated, because it wasn't adding anything. Okay, I get to hear this modern tale guy, Otto or Osto, I can't even remember his frickin' name because he was so immemorable, who is this modern assassin hunter who has joined the Templars. I get to hear about him, and his belief in the Templar cause and his historical revisionism about how he interprets events from the previous, from the past, that doesn't add anything to my enjoyment of the storyline of Shay, or his moral compass spinning wildly out of control, or the further enveloping of why the Assassins and why the Templars are the way they are. There's a lot of great story in the past, and it kept getting interrupted by, oh, hang on, go fix a server. Now, don't mistake me. I actually liked the little light puzzle things. Those were fun. Great visual recognition thing. I kind of wish I'd been streaming them, because what would legitimately happen is I'm sitting here and I'm just looking at it like, okay, but without confidence, if that makes any sense. It's not like I just saw the solution. It's like, well, this should be here. Well, now that that's here, this should be here. Well, now that that's here, this should be here. Oh, there we go. It just kind of slid into place rather than I immediately understood the solution. But there were several of those where I'm just staring at it for like several minutes like, that doesn't make sense. That doesn't make sense. That doesn't make sense. They were fun, don't mistake me, but they really got in the way. Why not divorce the series? Why not present, past? Get rid of the framing device. I get it. The animus. Okay, we got it. We know. It's so commonplace. It's a frickin' chair now that some guy can just hop into with no training and no assassin and no big in-depth thing. You can just plug yourself in. It's been modernized. It's been commonized, for God's sakes. It's a form of entertainment that Abstergo is literally selling to the populace. That being said, there was exactly one thing in the present storyline that I found interesting, and that was Warren Vidic. Now, those of you who have been watching this series know he's frickin' dead. I already gave you the spoiler alert, so no apologies on this one. He's frickin' dead. He's dead and gone. And, oh, it was so satisfying, because I hate him. I hate him so much. I hated that guy. I wanted to punch him in the face every time I saw him. I can't decide if he was well written or not, but man, I hated his guts. But props to the developers, and to the writers more specifically, for making Warren Vidic still relevant in the present storyline despite being dead. And they nailed his characterization, too. The scene I'm thinking of in particular, he's mentioned a few times, but the one that really clinched it for me is he's trying to recruit Mr. Anti-Assassin guy, and he comes in with his troops, and it's like, this is a pill, this will save your daughter, this will prevent her from living in horrific nightmarish pain, this is what I'm offering you, work for us. And the guy says, one condition, that man upset my daughter. And so Warren Vidic says, say no more. Johnson, give him your gun. Yeah. For those of you not aware, Rogue sits in the middle of a trilogy, actually, which is weird because it came out after the previous two, but whatever, time shenanigans, it makes a degree of sense. The storyline goes from 4 to Rogue to 3, in case anybody is wondering. Adewale and Achilles are actually fairly... Well, Achilles is a fairly major, and Adewale is a decently major character, as is Hatham, Mr. Kenway, in Rogue, and it's awesome. And the way it ties in with the other two is actually very well done, in my opinion. It's not just done for fan service's sake, although I admit I grinned really big when Adewale showed up. I really liked Adewale. He was an awesome character. It made me legitimately sad to kill him. I was, no, I don't. Okay. I refused to sneak up on him and stab him. I wanted to give him a fight. I wanted to let him die with a sword in his hands. Or Blunderbuss, if you've played the DLC for 4. Anyways, so it's a nice way to be in the middle of things. One thing I find interesting, and I know this is kind of segueing into the gameplay section, of which I have several notes as well, but it's funny to me how all 3 games that form a fairly cohesive trilogy, story-wise, are also fairly cohesive gameplay-wise. 3 introduced several new mechanics with regards to hunting and different ways of climbing. It wasn't the brand new climbing tech that would actually be introduced in Unity, but they added new functionality for getting around on trees and that kind of thing, and a few other little tidbits. It's iterative. I'll talk more about that later. And then, of course, 4 went full tilt with the ship stuff, and it was awesome for it. I loved the ship stuff, and the seamless, jump off the ship into the island kind of a thing. And then Rogue basically continues that, same ship stuff, same advancements from 3, with its own little advancements as well. Gameplay-wise, if you play 4 Rogue 3, or in release order, 3, 4 Rogue, I think you'll actually be able to appreciate the trilogy a lot better, just for the gameplay, not regarding the story. Now, so for those that are not aware, Rogue and Unity, story-wise, are basically happening at the same time, in the present, I mean. And there's actually some disagreement, and I'm not sure of the 100% answer who we're playing as in the present in Rogue. I was under the strong impression we're playing the same guy who was the analyst in 4, who was also someone who was working at Abstergo. But I'm not sure if that guy is the protagonist of Unity, or if we're the one, or if that guy's the protagonist of Rogue, or neither, for that matter. I'm actually not sure. It made sense to me for the 4 one to be here, especially given certain other things, but I'm not actually sure. It could just be 3 different people. Who knows? It's almost irrelevant, because we're not given a name or a title or anything, actually. We are less than Gordon Freeman, because he had a name and an appearance. We have neither of those things. We have a little tablet. So let's just kind of start going down the list here. I actually have a separate point here. Poor Adewale, just by itself there. Why the memory issue thing from the virus? Now, I mentioned that at the time I wrote that note. It's pretty much towards the beginning of Rogue. I was like, well, because it was just such an obvious thing to me that we were playing the protagonist from 4. So why have the memory loss thing? Why even have that in there? Why not just have us be the guy from 4 and be done with it? As I mentioned, it's because we're not 100% sure if we are that guy or for anyone else, for that matter. But I do want to point out one interesting thing. So I've kind of already said everything I have to say about the present storyline in Rogue. I really have nothing else to add. It's kind of disinteresting, and it's kind of more about showing the way that several members of the Templars in the modern era think. And there is one thing that's significant about that with regards to the past. I'll get to that later. But otherwise, it's just irrelevant. So, moving on. You notice Rogue starts in the past. In fact, it starts off kind of awesomely. So, first of all the trailers for this game said that the assassins have betrayed me, and now I will kill all of them. You know, that whole thing. You know, my parents were killed by rogue assassins in the back alley, so I became Assassin Man. You know, that kind of a thing. And we start on, and it's called Rogue, and the intro thing has the assassin's symbol that's all shattered. The game is not in any way being subtle about the fact that we're playing an anti-assassin group. That being said, it starts off in an interesting way playing with that, because there's a little kill icon on someone who's clearly an assassin running ahead, and we have to chase after him and kill him, but it's actually Liam and we're just playing. Then the game immediately gets into gameplay. Let me share something that some people are going to understand and some people aren't. I like being a collectivist. That's... I don't mean in the political sense. It just occurred to me that's a political term as well. A collector? Someone who enjoys collecting things in video games. Or in real life, for that matter. This is not actually that uncommon of a thing. People who like to collect models or action figures or trains. You know, train sets. Or in video games, people who like to catch them all. In Pokemon, for example. Or... you know, like to 100% a game, that kind of a thing. I have actually enjoyed collectathoning, is actually what my friend Pax calls it. I've enjoyed doing collectathoning in every Assassin's Creed game except for one. The first one I actually didn't enjoy 100%ing. I found it just tedious. But every other one, I have enjoyed the process enough that I've done it. And I don't do it in one big bundle, too. I kind of spread it out. I've found that if I try to just get everything on the map all in one bundle, I'll get tired of it. So it's like I'll get an area and then do a mission, then I'll get a next area and do a mission, that kind of a thing. Helps spread it out a bit. So I enjoy that in general. I do like how the very beginning of Rogue, it's like, oh, kill the assassin! No, it's a psych. And you're on an island. And there's stuff to collect. Immediately. I've begun to feel that that's just basically the Assassin's Creed shtick. Go collect stuff. But I did like that. I like how it gave us that freedom, because we don't have to. I mean, it's nice and it's fun, and it gets you some bonuses that ultimately only are really necessary if you either, A, want to just completely curb stomp your opposition, or B, want to have an easier time of it. Or you can just completely bypass them and just do the main quests. Every time you actually fight something particularly hard, the map will actually tell you, by the way, you should probably go upgrade your ship before this mission, because this is going to be a hard mission. So it's not like the game doesn't warn you. But I liked that way of starting things. And of course it starts in the past, where it should, where the story is actually relevant. Now, let me go ahead and say that obviously this is the story of showing the Templar side of things. 3 kind of started that, and from what I understand, Unity also did the same general thing. I have not played Unity, let's make that clear. I just know several spoilery things about both Unity and Syndicate, excuse me. But this is the era of trying to show... This is the next season, I think is actually probably a better way to put that. Because we had the season of the foundation of the Assassins. We had the season of the rise of the Assassin Order and the cartoonishly evil Borgia. Borgia? I don't actually know how to pronounce that right now. I haven't played the Ezio games in a long time. That family. So they were just horrifically evil. We had that era, and then we kind of, then the series kind of stalled for a bit as the writers clearly didn't know where to go with it, and now they've taken stride in a new direction. They've found their footing. It's like, okay, now we're telling this storyline. And at first glance, I thought they were trying to portray basically the assassins as the bad guys and the Templars as the good guys. And the first half of this game does seem to lean in that direction. It takes a while, quite a few missions and quite a few hours, before you get to the point where the assassins finally betray you. I'll talk about the betrayal in just a moment. And the whole time, you are basically a rhetoric-spouting idiot every time you kill one of the Templars. And the Templars, our effort is made to make them far more sympathetic and understandable and likable. In retrospect, that was probably a necessary move, even though it feels like clumsy writing going through it in the moment. The reason I say it was probably necessary was because of what I just mentioned about most of the Templars, like Warren Vidic is a great example of that. So past and present, the Templars are usually portrayed as horrifically evil. So in order to counteract that, you need to show them as better than that. Then you could move to your actual point. Let's talk about the betrayal really quick, though. I mentioned that. So the betrayal is extremely ham-fisted, and I'm going to go and be honest, I think it's probably the weakest moment in the story of this game. And I mean that sincerely. It is just very forced. I mentioned my TV series thing. It felt like fake TV drama. I've got to steal this to make sure that no one ever uses this to destroy cities again. I will not let you stop me! He doesn't say from what. I sincerely doubt Achilles actually wants to destroy cities. I mean, it's Achilles. Granted, he's grown a little bit by 3, but seriously? But no, we're just apparently going to have this disagreement, and it's going to turn into a fight, and then it's going to turn into assassination, and it's just going to keep escalating until everyone on the assassin side is suddenly cartoonishly evil and calling us a traitor all the time. But that's... So, again, that's dumb. I cannot give the betrayal scenes any points. I can't. Except for one. I guess I lied. Shaw's reaction is perfectly understandable. Achilles? No. The others? No. They should have talked this out. They should have been like, whoa, whoa, hey, dude. They should have tried to restrain him. They shouldn't have tried to kill him. But Shaw's reaction, the main character's reaction, is extremely logical. You know why? Because he's driven mad. He actually portrays this quite well, actually. This is someone who, while not exactly what we would call, a hero, was nevertheless someone who believed in a moral compass and believed in doing the right thing. And that was emphasized several times, even before the Lisbon incident. By the way, I actually do study history, so when I suddenly see that we're in Lisbon in 1755, I just got chills, because I knew it was coming. It was horrifying. And then when we finally triggered, I'm like, oh god, no, no. And the gameplay of the next section kind of sucks. I'll talk about that in a moment. Even though I don't want to talk about gameplay that much right now. But the story implication of basically the game practically grabs your eyes effectively, grabs your vision, and forces you right down so you see individual persons. I use that term specific, not people, not an aggregate. You see individuals and their lives being crushed or destroyed, fleeing, scared. Some of them are shocked, standing, unable to think. Some of them are just kneeling in prayer. None of them have any idea what to do about this horrific quake. And many, many people died. And the game forces you to see that. It is actually brutally, uncaringly blunt in how it does that. And I do applaud that from a story perspective. And it is some degree of gameplay and story integration. The problem is it's an Uncharted sequence, not an Assassin's Creed sequence. We're literally on rails. In fact, the first couple of times I failed because I had no control over my camera. I steer. I'm playing on the PC, obviously. So I steer with the camera, which is my mouse, right? So if I'm trying to turn, I don't hit W or D, excuse me. I hit nothing. I steer my mouse to the right. The game in several sections of this is completely here. No camera control. So in order to turn, you have to hit D, which I usually don't even do. So I would run and then hit a wall and then death by quake. And I felt that it took a little bit too much out of the player's hands. If you're going to have that kind of gameplay and story integration, make it matter. Make us run around and have to do mini games effectively, trying to save people or trying to escape, or deciding if we try to save people, and if we try to save people, we fail. You know, make the player be interactive with the situation, rather than basically just holding down W, Shift, and occasionally hitting A and D. That's not really interactive at that point. And it's very anti-Assassin's Creed, and I didn't think they did that section well from a gameplay perspective. Everything else was properly terrifying. So again, Shaw was driven, or is it Shay? I suddenly can't remember. I just finished this game like a few minutes ago, or hours, however long, I don't know how long I've been talking, and I can't think of the main character's name. I should look that up really quick before I keep referring to him. I thought it was Shaw. Hang on. Give me just a second. Assassin's Creed Rogue. Okay, you know what, fine. Okay, we play as... Yes, I know it's Cormac. What's his other name? They keep calling him Cormac. I don't remember that. It's Shay. It's Shay. I've been saying the wrong name this whole time. Sorry. You can tell he made a big impact on me. Actually, since I've just brought that up, incidentally, I do have to say that Shay was actually one of the weakest protagonists I've seen thus far. Even though Connor, I felt, was badly presented, he was still an interesting protagonist in several ways. Shay, aside from the madness, aside from him going crazy with guilt and grief, and that causing, you know, his descent, he feels like someone who goes along with things for whatever reason and never really learns or grows or develops. I felt like he didn't really have a character arc. He had a backstory, you know, a characterization that was destroyed when Lisbon was. That's good. But then nothing ever happened after that. And I felt that was bad. So, yeah, not very memorable. Loved his outfit, though. I found a site that actually sells cosplays for that. I'm really thinking about buying one as soon as I lose a little more weight. So, yeah, the Quake. I'm actually going to pause here, as weird as this sounds, and I'm going to shift over to gameplay, and then I'm going to finish off with my last thoughts here. I love the ship stuff. It's fun, it's awesome, going around pirating and taking out forts and conquering areas and getting the income and spending the income. I do have to say money is one of the most... This alongside Assassin's Creed 2, the original, you know, not none of the expansions, is... or wait, was it 2? Maybe it was actually Revelations. Or maybe it was Brotherhood. God, they blur for me. Anyways, one of the earlier ones, I think it was 2, where you could do, you know, take over the city stuff, and you can do that here as well. Money is, like, so useless. It's useful right at the beginning, and then it becomes useless very quickly. By the time I got to, you know, had gotten to, I don't know how to pronounce his name, the Indian gentleman, the Indian assassin. I had already had like 40 grand just lying around in my pocket, nothing to spend it on, because you don't actually need that much money to upgrade your ship, which is the real thing to upgrade. You need resources, and you need resources to craft. So, I mean, lots of impetus to go pirating, but the money was just kind of, okay. It was fun taking over the gangs and slowly conquering New York, as well as the forts in the 2 oceanic zones. And I liked that. I mentioned, of course, the fact that the 3 games are connected gameplay-wise. I don't really have anything else to add about that. And I talked about the Uncharted sequence. All of these are some of my gameplay notes here. I do think it's fitting that the territory conquest makes a return in this game, given that this game is the beginning of one of the great purges of the Assassin Order. What I mean by that, most of Ezio's conquests were the golden age of the Assassin's Brotherhood. Really, if you think about it in the lore. That was when they were on the strongest. They could operate across the entire continent of Europe with almost impunity, and had the Templars on the run at every turn. And it was not until Ezio's death and the moving on of the Order that slowly went away, basically. This is the reverse of that. In the colonies, the Brotherhood had a very strong presence, and we, as Shay, pretty much just dissect that and remove that, along with Hatham. God, I hope I'm getting his name right. Kenway Jr. And so it makes sense that we are now, renovating and reconquering the area. And I also have to admit, the usage of the Colonel, don't remember his name, was a very nice character point gameplay-wise, because it's logical that someone with that mentality, Templar or no, would be interested in renovations rather than building up defenses, for example. I do like how during the Templar missions you get rewards for less conflict, especially on the side mission stuff. You literally get better outcome of it, gameplay-wise, if you don't cause a fuss. I like that for two reasons. One, it encourages you for precise gameplay, which is something I love doing in the Assassin's Creed style games. It's what I love over in Dishonored, actually. But two, I love it because it's very Templar. They don't want you to not kill. You don't get penalized for killing. And if you feel like it, as long as you don't raise an alarm, you can kill every single one of the people in that building, or that area, or that fort, and you will still get the bonus. They're not anti-killing, they're anti-chaos. If you start a big ruckus and just charge in and everyone's like, ah, rah, 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 that's not Templar. Templar is the order thing, and I like that. I also love how the English remained hostile after you became Templar. There's a few key exceptions to that, but for the most part, if you take a fort and it's replaced by English soldiers, they're red. And under the wrong circumstances, they will go hostile and try to kill you. I loved that. Because, on the one hand, it makes sense because we're effectively their allies, but we are not the English forces. We are not on behalf of England. We are Templars. We may have positions and political influence within England, or within France, for that matter, or within the colonies. But we are not the English. So it makes sense. I love that. Now I have another question here. Why can't I pilot a man of war all the time? There's one mission where you actually get to be at the helm of a man of war, and it is awesome. Piloting that behemoth. It's exactly what I love about properly designed ship combat. And you're fighting a vastly superior foe in just about every way, but you've got what is effectively a dreadnought. And you just boom, boom, as long as you know what you're doing, as long as you're careful. I didn't even get touched in that mission. No damage, well, I should say no damage from the fire ships. And just kaboom, mortar, and God, and then do this. It was very, very fun. I get the whole point with the Morrigan being the smaller, more customizable, more upgradable ship. And Lord knows, a fully customized Morrigan, which I actually never got to. I stopped doing side quests after a bit because, to be honest, I was running out of time. A fully upgraded Morrigan might as well be a man of war. But damn it, just give me a man of war. Alright, now let me get into the big stuff here. Let's talk about iterative game design. One of the more common... I'm probably going to get some negative points for this, but whatever. I'm going to be honest with you guys. It's always one of my big 3 tenets, or is it 4? I don't know. One of my big tenets on my show is being honest with you guys. I find the complaint that I hear, most of the complaints that I hear about the Assassin's Creed series being the same old schlock every new game, to be ignorant. It's the exact same reason I find those complaints about the FIFA games to be ignorant, or the Pokemon games, or the Elder Scrolls games, or the Dynasty Warrior games. Now, let's talk about this, because there's an actual topic here. From the perspective of someone who is not a fan, from the perspective of someone who is not going in depth into any one of the franchises I just mentioned, yeah, they probably all look the same. Especially from a completely outside perspective, someone who doesn't even play the franchise. This is why I say it's an opinion born of ignorance, because this is iteration, not cloning. It is not the same game. I have heard people legitimately say that Pokemon Gen 1 and Pokemon Gen 5 are the same game, and that is ludicrous. If you happen to be in the franchise and know what they've done to change up things and to alter things and to iterate the game design. And that's the key word I want to toss at you, because it's very relevant to Rogue. I would have to really think and use, actually take notes as I go, which I didn't, to show you all the things that was added to Rogue from 4's gameplay. And all the things, because what 4 got from 3 was pretty obvious. 4 added a lot to 3. But Rogue is an iteration of 4. There is new stuff here. There are new mechanics, there are new gameplay features, there are things that are presented differently, and it adds to the depth of the same general idea. That is, by definition, iterative game design. Now, I obviously prefaced this entire video with the idea that I don't get the whole fatigue thing. But I have to ask the question. I'm not going to give an answer to this, because it's not my point to answer it. I'm asking you, genuinely, do you think there's anything wrong, or right, or neither, with iterative game design? With taking the same idea and saying, how can we polish it? What can we add to it? We want to keep it the same. Well, we want to keep the same core trunk. We want to keep the same trunk, but we want to add some branches to it. Maybe some leaves and stuff. Very recently, I talked about Dishonored. I actually forget if this video or Dishonored's coming out first. I should probably put Dishonored out first, because I finished Dishonored before Rogue. And I mentioned one of the things Dishonored did very well was lots of brush strokes in its design. That is what Rogue has done to 4. 4 had a lot of brush strokes, but Rogue has even more. There's more little details done to the gameplay design in order to flesh out the overall experience more, and to make it more fun and more interesting. Even the stupid Facebook minigame, I shouldn't call it Facebook, the mobile minigame, as far as controlling the fleet, had additional little details that help flesh out and make it a little bit more enjoyable, a little bit more fun with regards to actual resources and a few other things. I'm not going over details. More brushstrokes. I liked that. But again, I'm not here to say if iterative design is right or wrong. I just think the complaint that Rogue is the same as 4, is the same as 2, or whatever, is an invalid complaint. And now, the hate comments. I'll give you a moment to pause and go, hate comment. Go ahead, it's okay. Now, that's relevant because the story is simultaneously ham-fisted and brilliantly subtle. Hear me out. It's not quite to the level of, say, Grand Theft Auto 4, which is one of the most bluntly subtle literary works I've ever seen. But, so you just kind of segue into being a Templar. You don't ever really realize you're a Templar until you see someone who is a known, we the players know as a Templar, and then we just kind of keep playing as one. And it's not actually for like another 2 missions that we are formally inducted in, but we've effectively been Templars for several missions now. It's a nice gradual change, and I like that because that's the freaking point. The point of this game, thematically, is not to make the Templars better or the Assassins worse, but to show that they're the frickin' same. I'm going to go over a few details, then I'll hit with my big final point. The idea of the gangs, the thugs working for the Assassin's Brotherhood is so logical. I am amazed we haven't really seen that before now. It makes perfect sense that a group that espouses, our own order, for foregoing the laws of other people and our creed and all that fun stuff, has not before now really had a visible presence in criminal activities. I don't mean like legitimate crime, or I don't mean people who are illegal. I mean criminals. I mean thugs. I mean we're going to rough up these people because they're there, because we want protection money. That kind of people. It makes so much sense. I'm amazed we haven't seen that before. I also love how if you were to play this game and assume that you were always playing on the side of the Assassins, nothing really changes. You wouldn't have to adjust the tone or the dialogue, just a few words here and there, and of course characters, so that the other side was Assassins, the other side was the Templars and you were the Assassins, and it would slide in neatly. In fact, I actually was paying attention to the specific word choice of a lot of bits of dialogue. And if you divorce the sentence from the person saying it, it sounds like the exact same stuff we would hear on the Assassin side in other Assassin's Creed games. And, of course, both sides have the same overall mentality. The fallacy, if you will, that they have real power. Now, quick aside, as I mentioned, I do believe, in obviously my own theory, I believe in the superhuman quality of certain members of the series. Hatham and Shay would be the ones in this particular game, and therefore, people who are literally metahuman in a sense. But what I mean by that is the Assassin's Creed Brotherhood and the Templar Order both operate as if they are separate from political power. They operate as if they are some kind of external force, divorced from the laws of men, and some kind of thing. And usually in fiction, when you see something like that, it's because those people have real power, the ability to make fire happen, just mage or superhero powers or whatever. There's so many different sources of that in fiction. Some sort of real power that helps to divorce them from political power. But they, again, aside from the main characters, there really is no such thing here in the Assassin's Creed series. Furthermore, both sides have absolutely no problems killing lots and lots of debatably innocent, debatably guilty people to get to one individual, because both sides have the mentality that those in the middle don't matter. The French don't matter. The English don't matter. The colonies don't matter. The Indian tribes that are present, forgive me for not remembering, there's several that are named throughout the game, don't matter. What matters is the other side, because we're real, and so are they. It is our war that matters, not the wars of the world. In fact, there's actually a specific line about that. We may live in a time of war, but we are always at war. And significance being present there. And that brings me to my final big point. At first, I thought it was weird and badly written about how it was trying... It felt... I misunderstood, and I thought the game was trying to portray the Templars as more good and the Assassins as more evil. It's not. What it's trying to do is something that's so awesome. I'm amazed it hasn't really been done before. Something that has been kind of building up over the course of a couple of other games, and from what I understand is also a fairly strong theme in Unity. I mean, the name is probably relevant there. It's showing that both organizations are organizations. They are groups of people. There are bad eggs. I mentioned the Borgias, or however you say their damn name earlier. And even the Templars of the modern era, this is actually in the game, look down upon them for how much they abused their Templar power, about how they had no interest in the Templar cause and were solely using the connections of the Templar Order in order to further their own personal greed. They were bad guys. They were villains in the traditional sense of the word. But the Templars as a whole is just an organization. There are bad people, and there are good people. The Assassins, as an organization, have bad people and good people. And as you go through the game, you see just as many of both on both sides, because they're political entities, not ideological ones. This is the true irony, I think, of what has happened as of Rogue, and probably by the modern era, although that's debatable. The gentleman voiced by John Delancey had a line about this in 3, actually. After a certain point in time, ideologies and the fact that they separate people tend to be little more than rallying cries as opposed to genuine beliefs. Instead, the Templars have begun their own political organization, which may ascribe to saying, yes, we all believe in order, and the Assassins may ascribe to the belief that we believe in freedom. But in truth, they're both just political entities, just like any other political party in the world. And all they care about is the furtherance of the party, of their side, of their organization. And this game goes way out of its way throughout the entire game. It actually spends a lot of time. I was initially upset that we spent so much time as the assassin, but then I realized it was necessary because it had to show in this game how much the assassins were just like the Templar as a body. There may be good people over here, and there may be good people over here. And there's bad people over here, and there's bad people over here. But the organizations are mirrors of each other. And that's a brilliant way for the story to go in. I am actually kind of looking forward now, some year, to be playing Unity and Syndicate to see where else they've taken this overall theme. For now, though, I don't actually have much else to say. Except give me my man of war! I'll see you later, guys.